Don't even think about asking us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Billy Joel tickets booked for months. My mother's voice blasted through the phone, echoing harshly across the quiet of my hospital room. I sat frozen, my phone shaking slightly in my hand, disbelief washing over me. It was Christmas Eve, and here I was in a hospital bed at Las Vegas Medical Center. Caleb and Maisie, my 3-year-old twins, played quietly together in the corner, blissfully unaware, while Tanya, the nurse, checked my vitals. The pain in my stomach felt like a knife slowly twisting deeper and deeper, yet it was the cold indifference in my mother's expression through the video call that cut me the deepest. My name is Rachel Kessler. I'm 32 years old, and my entire life, I felt like nothing more than an afterthought in my own family. My younger sister Mallory was always the perfect child, the family favorite who could do no wrong. And here I was, unable to convince my parents to watch their only grandkids while I had emergency surgery stemming from complications linked to my husband's death 7 months earlier. The doctors found internal bleeding and said surgery couldn't wait, yet my parents cared more about their concert tickets and celebrating Christmas Eve with Mallory. When I finally reached out, desperate and with no other options, my dad's words cut deeper than any surgeon's scalpel ever could. "You're becoming a real burden, Rachel. We're retired. We deserve to enjoy our lives without always dealing with your problems." I'd been supporting my parents financially ever since they decided to retire early 4 years ago. Every single month, without fail, I sent them $3,250 to cover their mortgage and other expenses. Even after Aaron passed away, I did it out of love, a sense of duty, and the belief that family should always be there for each other. How naive I'd been. Silent tears slid down my cheeks onto the sterile hospital blanket. Tanya softly squeezed my shoulder in a gentle act of compassion. "My friend Jenna is a professional nanny who specializes in childhood trauma," she suggested quietly. "Let me call her for you." Her kindness was a stark contrast to the heartlessness of my own parents. The twins were too young to fully understand the severity of the moment. They'd already lost their dad in a car accident. Now there was a chance they'd lose me too if things went wrong during surgery. The thought was terrifying, but the idea of leaving them with people who viewed them as an inconvenience was even more devastating. Right there, in a moment heavy with physical agony and emotional betrayal, I made a crucial decision. "Yes, please call her," I whispered to Tanya, beginning the difficult process of cutting ties with the family who had raised me yet never truly cared. When I finally ended the call, a flood of painful memories rushed over me. Throughout my childhood, I'd always felt invisible next to Mallory, whose achievements were celebrated while mine went unnoticed. When I graduated college with honors, my parents barely seemed interested because Mallory had landed a local commercial spot that weekend. When Aaron and I married, they complained the venue was too far away. And when the twins were born, they visited only once, complaining the babies cried too much. Aaron had been my anchor, my safe haven from the constant disappointment my family dealt out. He understood that pain all too well, having been estranged from his own father for years. "We'll create our own family," he'd often reassure me, "one that knows how to love unconditionally." And we did. Our home had been filled with laughter, warmth, and acceptance, until 7 months ago when a drunk driver took him from us, leaving me to navigate grief, depression, and single parenthood alone. Even after losing Aaron, I still supported my parents financially. When they complained inflation was hitting them hard, I even increased the monthly amount. I wanted to prove that families should stick together, no matter the cost. The irony was devastating. Here I was, possibly facing death, and my parents couldn't miss a concert to help their own grandchildren. Tanya soon returned with good news. Jenna would be here within the hour. "She's incredible with kids," Tanya assured me. "She worked with trauma victims at Children's Hospital before becoming a private nanny." "How much will she cost?" I asked nervously, already drowning in medical expenses. Aaron insurance coverage had limitations, and the bills just kept stacking up. "Let's worry about that later," Tanya gently encouraged. "Right now, let's just get you ready for surgery." But I couldn't stop worrying. My mind wandered to the $3,250 scheduled to transfer to my parents' bank account next week, money that would be far better spent caring for my own children. A spark ignited within me, a sense of self-respect I'd long abandoned. When Jenna arrived, she was everything Tanya had promised: kind, professional, and instantly connected with Caleb and Maisie. As the nurses prepared me for surgery, I made another decision. "Could you hand me my phone once more?" I asked Tanya quietly. With trembling fingers, I sent 2 final messages. The first message went straight to my bank, canceling all future transfers to my parents. The second message was brief yet firm, directed at my parents themselves. "I'm no longer providing you with financial support. My children and I deserve more than being your afterthought. Do not contact me again." As they rolled me down the hallway toward the operating room, something unexpected cut through the haze of pain and fear. Relief. It felt like freedom. The operation itself went well, though it left me more drained than I'd imagined. I spent the next 7 days in the hospital, slipping in and out of consciousness. During those long hours, I was beyond grateful for Jenna. She stayed with the twins during the day, comforting them in the unfamiliar space of my hospital room, and took them home to my apartment at night so they could sleep in their own beds. One afternoon, when my mind was clearer, I noticed my phone blinking nonstop with notifications. 23 missed calls and dozens of texts from my parents and Mallory. The pattern was predictable. First confusion, then anger, then a barrage of desperate messages about their mortgage. Not a single one asked how the surgery had gone, or if Caleb and Maisie were okay. The last message from my dad summed it all up. "You can't just cut us off. We booked a cruise for next month and the tickets are non-refundable." Mallory's text stood out from the rest. She sounded genuinely confused. "Mom and Dad said you were having some minor procedure. Why are they flipping out about money?" That's when it hit me. They had lied to her. They downplayed the entire situation, making it sound like I was being dramatic so they could justify choosing a concert over caring for their grandkids. Still groggy from meds, I sent her a message explaining the truth. The whole story. Her response came quickly. "Oh my God, Rachel, I had no idea it was emergency surgery. They told me it was just a routine checkup and you were exaggerating. I would have watched the twins if I'd known. I'm so sorry." And I believed her. Mallory was never cruel, just raised in a world where her wants always came first. Maybe now she'd start to see who our parents really were. By the time I was released from the hospital, I'd made some big decisions. First, I officially hired Jenna part-time to help out with the twins while I recovered. Second, I contacted an attorney to draft a will, naming a close friend as the twins' legal guardian in case something ever happened to me. My parents were no longer an option. And third, I blocked my parents' numbers. I left the door slightly open for Mallory, though, just enough to see if she was being sincere. Cutting off the monthly $3,250 I'd been sending to my parents was a huge financial shift. It had been nearly a third of my income as a freelance graphic designer. But without that weight on my shoulders, I could finally afford proper childcare and maybe start rebuilding the emergency savings that had been drained dry after Aaron died. That first night back home, lying in my own bed with the twins sleeping peacefully across the hall, I felt a swirl of emotions. Guilt crept in, the kind that comes from years of being trained to put everyone else first. There was fear, too, knowing how hard it would be to heal while raising 2 toddlers. But underneath it all was something new. Self-respect. I was finally choosing us. Then my phone buzzed. It was Mallory. "I just had a massive fight with Mom and Dad about how they've treated you. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow?" Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't entirely alone. 2 weeks after the surgery, I was slowly getting stronger. The incision still burned when I moved too quickly, but every day got a little easier. Jenna was a blessing, arriving each morning to help with the twins so I could keep up with my work. My design clients had been incredibly patient with my limited hours, and I felt thankful for a job that let me work from home. Mallory had stopped by twice since then, each time bringing over healthy meals and spending real time with the twins. At first, our conversations were cautious, but little by little, she opened up. One evening, while the twins played with blocks on the rug, she turned to me and said, "They always made it seem like you were the one choosing to be distant. I never realized they were pushing you away." It was the first time I saw past the Golden Girl facade. Beneath it was someone who'd also been shaped, maybe warped, by our parents' favoritism and control. I wasn't ready to fully trust her yet, but I appreciated her effort. Then came the knock I'd been half expecting. I looked through the peephole, and there they were, my parents. My mom stood fidgeting with her designer purse, while my dad leaned back with his arms crossed, the same annoyed expression carved into his face. My heart thudded, but I cracked the door just enough to speak. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Rachel, sweetheart, we've been so worried," my mom cooed, the fake sweetness in her voice setting off every alarm in my body. "You haven't answered our calls. We just needed to check on you and the kids." "We're fine," I said flatly. "If that's all." "It's not all," my father cut in, leaning against the door as if to push it open further. "We need to talk about this ridiculous financial situation. The bank called about our mortgage, and now we've had to use money from our cruise fund to make the payment." The nerve of it all took my breath away. Not a single question about how I was recovering, not a flicker of concern for their grandchildren. Just outrage over the money. "I told you I'm done sending financial support," I said firmly. And I meant it. "But sweetheart," my mother's voice went up an octave, straining with desperation, "we've come to depend on that money. Your father and I built our lifestyle around your commitment to help us." "Commitment?" I echoed, stunned. "I sent that money because I felt guilty and obligated, not because I owed you. And while I was in the hospital having emergency surgery, you couldn't even bother to look after your own grandchildren." My father's expression darkened. "That's not fair, Rachel. We had plans. Plans that were more important than the safety of your grandkids? More important than my life?" I shot back, my voice rising. "The doctor said I might not make it through that surgery. Did either of you even care enough to ask?" The silence that followed said everything. "We made one mistake," my mother finally whispered, her tone dripping with theatrics. "Are you really going to punish us like this?" "This isn't punishment," I said calmly, feeling a strange peace settle in me. "It's a consequence. I've spent my entire life trying to earn your approval. And when I needed you most, you chose Billy Joel tickets over helping your own daughter." "We're your parents," my dad snapped, trying to pull rank. "And I'm a parent too," I replied. "And I would never treat Caleb and Maisie the way you've treated me. Not ever." Just then, Emily wandered into the hallway, clutching her little stuffed giraffe. My mom instantly shifted tactics. "There's my sweet girl," she cooed, crouching down. "Grandma brought you some presents." Emily, uncertain and unfamiliar with the strangers before her, took a cautious step back and looked up at me. "I think you should leave," I said softly but firmly. "If and when I'm ready to talk, I'll reach out." "But the money," my father started, "is no longer your concern," I finished, gently closing the door. The very next morning, they were back, this time with reinforcements. My Aunt Luann, my mother's sister and the self-appointed family peacemaker, stood outside my door. "Rachel, sweetheart, let's be reasonable." Aunt Luann pleaded through the door I refused to open. "Your parents are having a tough time without your support." "They managed just fine before I ever started helping," I replied. "They chose early retirement even though they knew they didn't have enough saved. That was their decision." My mother's voice chimed in from the other side. "We made those choices because you promised to help us. We've already canceled our cruise. Now we could lose the house." It was surreal, hearing it laid out like that, so blatant, so manipulative. I could finally see through the guilt they'd wrapped me in for so long. I never promised lifelong support. I offered temporary help after they retired. Somehow that morphed into a permanent, expected obligation. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice steady, "I'm recovering from major surgery while raising 2 toddlers. This conversation is over." I walked away from the door, leaving their knocking and pleading unanswered. That afternoon, my father sent out a group email to the entire extended family. In it, he accused me of abandoning them during their time of need, claiming they had sacrificed everything for me and that I had suddenly and selfishly cut them off. Not surprisingly, he left out the part where they refused to help during my emergency surgery. But they hadn't counted on the backlash. Cousin Travis replied to the thread almost immediately. "Uncle Frank, didn't you just buy a boat last month?" Then Aunt Noelle chimed in. "And wasn't that a new diamond tennis bracelet you showed off at Thanksgiving?" Private messages started pouring in. Several relatives asked what had really happened. Even Aunt Luann called me directly after hearing the full story. "I had no idea about your surgery," she admitted. "They told me you were being dramatic about some routine procedure and using it as an excuse to cut them off." Mallory was already fully on my side. After seeing our parents' behavior for herself, she helped me write a short, clear response to the email thread. "I recently underwent emergency surgery with serious complications. My parents refused to care for my children during this time because they had concert tickets. I'm now focusing on recovery and raising my twins without added stress." The support was immediate and overwhelming. Cousin Travis's wife dropped off home-cooked meals. A second cousin I barely knew offered to help babysit part-time, free of charge. Mallory started spending weekends with us, bonding with the twins and helping however she could. And then there was Tanya. She connected me with a support group for young widowed parents. The first meeting was held over Zoom so I could attend from home. For the first time since Aaron died, I felt seen, surrounded by people who understood the unique pain I carried. Meanwhile, my parents' financial situation began to unravel fast. They had, in fact, been living far beyond their means, relying on my monthly contributions to keep up their illusion of comfort, travel, luxury purchases, and all. Mallory uncovered the full picture after they asked for her help reviewing their finances. Turns out they'd taken out a second mortgage on the house to buy that boat, assuming I'd keep covering their primary mortgage indefinitely. "They've been lying to everyone," Mallory said, shaking her head. "They're not broke. They're just overspent. They'd be fine if they sold the boat and got rid of that vacation timeshare." Their texts and voicemails kept coming, increasingly desperate. But with every message, their grip on me loosened. I was rebuilding my life from the ground up, creating something real, a network of people who cared out of kindness, not guilt. Then, a month after my surgery, everything shifted again. Mallory called, her voice a mix of frustration and worry. They got a foreclosure notice. The bank's giving them 50 days to catch up or they'll lose the house. "What about their retirement savings?" I asked, bouncing Emily on my knee while Ethan napped nearby. "Mostly gone," she sighed. "They spent a big chunk on the boat and the rest went into some sketchy investment one of Dad's golf buddies pitched. They lost nearly all of it. Look, I'm not saying you should step in. I just thought you'd want to know." That night, more texts came in. Any illusion of concern was gone. They were outright begging now. One from my mom stood out. "We never thought you'd actually cut us off. We figured you were just mad and would start sending money again in a week or two." That message hit a nerve. After everything I'd done, all the times I'd swallowed pain to meet their needs, they never believed I'd draw a line. It was clear. They never respected me. Meanwhile, my life was changing in ways I hadn't expected. The support group became a lifeline. Through it, I met Noelle, a real estate agent whose husband had passed from cancer 2 years earlier, leaving her with a young son. She opened my eyes to possibilities I hadn't considered, selling my cramped apartment and using the equity to move somewhere more affordable with better childcare options. I also started a side hustle designing memorial websites, inspired by the one I made for Aaron. Several group members asked me to create tributes for their loved ones, and word started to spread. For the first time in so long, I had purpose again, something beyond just surviving. The contrast between my growth and my parents' unraveling was striking. Then they showed up again, unannounced. This time, they came armed with a spreadsheet, rows of red numbers and overdue payments. "We need $17,000 to get current on the mortgage," my father said, his usual commanding tone replaced with something shakier. I let them in, not because I felt obligated, but because I was curious to hear what they had to say now that reality had caught up to them. I gestured toward the dining table. "What about the boat?" I asked. "We'd have to sell it at a loss," my dad muttered. "And the timeshare?" "We've tried, but the market's bad," my mom jumped in. "Besides, those are our retirement luxuries." I nearly laughed. "Luxuries you can't afford." "We could afford them with your help," my father shot back, his tone hardening. "It's the least you could do after everything we've done for you." I leaned forward. "And what exactly have you done for me?" The question lingered. Then the twins wandered into the room, Ethan with his toy truck, Emily babbling softly, Their faces lit up. "There's our sweet babies," my mom said, reaching for Emily. Emily, unsure and cautious, stepped behind my legs. "They don't know you," I said simply. "You've seen them maybe 3 times. That was your choice." "That's not fair," my father argued. "We're busy people." "Too busy for your grandkids? Too busy to help your daughter through a health crisis, but not too busy to ask for money? That says everything." My mom's face twisted, either from genuine guilt or another performance. I honestly couldn't tell anymore. "Without your help, we'll lose everything," she whispered. "I lost my husband," I said, voice calm. "My kids lost their dad. We made it through. You will too." 2 months post-surgery, the inevitable happened. My parents sold their home to avoid foreclosure. Mallory kept me updated, though I kept my distance. They moved into a modest condo, a far cry from the 5,000-square-foot lakefront house they used to brag about. My dad let the boat go, finally, and they sold the timeshare for pennies on the dollar. "They're actually blaming you for their financial problems, right in front of everyone," Mallory told me during one of her weekly visits. "It's wild. They're telling anyone who'll listen that you abandoned them after promising lifelong support." "Let them say whatever they want," I replied, feeling more detached than bitter. "The truth speaks for itself." And it did. After learning the full story, most of the extended family had come around to my side. Even my father's sister, who always defended him no matter what, reached out with her support once she found out they refused to help during my surgery. Meanwhile, my life had taken a turn for the better. With Noelle's help from the support group, I managed to buy a small 4-bedroom house in a quiet, family-friendly neighborhood. Amazingly, the mortgage was less than I'd paid in rent for that tiny apartment, and the twins finally had a backyard to play in. For the first time, I could give them space to run and laugh. My memorial website business had grown too. I'd scaled back my graphic design clients and shifted more time toward work that felt meaningful. Jenna continued helping with childcare 3 days a week, and I arranged my schedule to be more present with Caleb and Maisie. Most importantly, I'd found community. Neighbors welcomed us with casseroles. The support group organized playdates. Mallory became a true sister, no longer just a competitor for our parents' attention. Even Tanya from the hospital would stop by occasionally with her own kids. I had lost so much, Aaron, the illusion of family, but somehow I felt more supported than ever before. 5 months after my surgery, a letter arrived, an actual handwritten letter from my mother. My first instinct was to toss it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was something I'd never seen from her before, a real apology. "I've had time to reflect on my behavior," she wrote. "Watching you build a life without our help forced me to confront painful truths. I was jealous of your independence, your resilience. I resented that you didn't seem to need me the way I needed my own mother. But I see now, you did need me. Just not in the way I wanted to be needed. When you asked us to care for the twins during your surgery, that was a plea for support, and we failed you. I'm so deeply sorry." She went on to explain how they'd restructured their finances. My dad had picked up part-time work at a local hardware store. They sold off most of their luxury items and had adjusted to living modestly for the first time in decades. She didn't ask for forgiveness or money, only that I read the letter and acknowledge it. I showed it to Mallory, who seemed cautiously optimistic. "They've been talking about writing you for a while. Dad was against it, but I think he's starting to see things differently, especially after his heart scare." "Heart scare?" I asked, caught off guard. "Just high blood pressure and chest pain. Nothing major, but it rattled him. He's on meds now and actually following the doctor's orders. I think it made him realize he's not invincible." Still, I wasn't ready to respond. I needed space to sit with it. Was this letter genuine, or just a new strategy to regain control? I couldn't tell yet. That night, I pulled out some old family photos, ones I hadn't looked at in over a year. Behind the posed smiles, I saw it all differently. The patterns, the manipulation, the performative parenting. They'd always played the part of the perfect family, but the spotlight had always been on their needs. Exactly 1 year after my surgery, I agreed to meet them. A quiet cafe near my new home. Neutral territory. Mallory offered to watch the twins for the afternoon. I wasn't ready for a full family reunion. When my parents walked in, I barely recognized them. My dad's presence had changed, his usual confidence now tempered with something closer to humility. My mom's designer look had been replaced with simple, understated clothes. We sat in silence for a moment before something unexpected happened. My father cried. "I've been a terrible father," he said, voice trembling, "and an even worse grandfather. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know, I see it now, how selfish we were." My mother leaned forward slightly, not quite touching my hand, but gesturing toward it. "We've been in family therapy," she said. "Mallory pushed us into it. We resisted at first, but it's changed us." I didn't offer instant forgiveness. I didn't make promises I couldn't keep. Instead, I told them about Caleb and Maisie, what they loved, what made them laugh. I showed pictures, and for once, they listened without turning the conversation back to themselves. As we stood to leave, my father asked softly, "Do you think someday we could get to know our grandchildren?" I paused, then answered, "That depends on your actions, not your words. If you're truly committed to change, we can start with short, supervised visits." But I made one thing crystal clear before we parted ways. Understand this: my children will only have relationships with people who respect their mother. As I walked away from that meeting, I didn't feel the heavy burden of obligation or the fiery resentment that had once defined my connection to them. What I felt instead was something unfamiliar, something powerful, the calm certainty of a woman who finally knew her own worth, a woman who had drawn lines in the sand and was no longer afraid to defend them. Whether or not my parents would truly change was still uncertain. That part of the story hadn't played out yet. But what mattered most was that I had changed. I was no longer the daughter chasing approval. I was a mother standing strong for her children, fierce in my protection, unwavering in my expectations, and finally, unapologetically free.